is everybody doing today? Oh my goodness. It is another wonderful time here at the world of Agorapulse. Corporate HQ here, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, kids of all ages, shapes, and sizes. My name is Daryl. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at Agorapulse. Quick question for you. Throw it in the chat, because that's what we do when we're on a webinar, right? We chat, because everybody knows, between you and I, that the best conversations take place in the chat. So normally we would go to you and say, hey, what part of the town, country, region, geography, whatever are you from? Put a shout out in there for your city. Represent. And you can do that. But I'm going to throw you a twist. If you had to guess without looking it up, no Google, no Bing, no Chat GPT, no YouTube, where is Agorapulse's worldwide headquarters? What city are we located in? Put it in the chat there. And guess what? The one who gets it right first gets absolutely nothing. That's my surprise to you. Okay, let's have some fun. We're talking today about how social media teams can use communities to drive growth. All right, so that's what we're talking about. Now, I told you my name. I told you who I am. I told you what we're doing today. Let's get on with the show. First thing you need to know between you and I is I'm dumb. I'm stupid. I don't know anything, but that's okay. Because I've got two really, really smart people who are going to give us all the answers on how social media teams can use communities to drive growth. First up, small little company you might have heard of, rhymes with SchmubSpot. Any guesses if you can finish it? All right, rhymes with SchmubSpot. Let me introduce to you the Principal Marketing Manager, Offline Community Advocacy, Ms. Christina Garnett. Christina, I have one important question for you.
Absolutely, shoot.
Is it Garnett or Garnet?
It's Garnett.
Yes, I got it right. It's always excited when I got it right. That's fantastic. So I have to ask the question before I bring my next guest on. What does a Principal Marketing Manager, Offline Community and Advocacy do at that little company whose name rhymes with SchmubSpot?
I am a fan of the fans. So just as I'm finding customers and partners and how they can advocate for us, I am a champion for them, finding opportunities where they can be thought leaders, where they can have their voice be louder. And so fan of the fans is really the crux of what I do each day.
A fan of the I have to ask you a silly question. The marketer in me wants to know, did you coin that line or did you get it from somebody else? Because it's a fantastic
It's
line.
mine. It's mine.
Well done. I like it. All right. So already you've got Christina with the company called HubSpot. She's a fan of the fans. She's going to tell you all about what you need to know on social media teams using communities to drive growth. But the living legend here at Agorapulse, who has led our social media team, who now leads our community team, has been on both sides of this equation. The one, the only, Deb Mitchell, Senior Community Manager. Deb, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Now, why are you excited to be here?
Well, I mean, you called me the legend, but Christina's really the legend. So I'm thrilled to be on the same stage as she is and happy to come out and talk about building community with everybody.
Fantastic. All right. So let's just have some fun here. So I'm just going to start this conversation off. This is live. This is unscripted. I have no idea where the conversation is going to go. So this could be dangerous. This could be scary, but usually it's kind of fun. What's the biggest misperception, misunderstanding, that you've experienced? I'll start with you, Deb, because you played both sides. Then I'm going to go throw to Christina, between the role of leading a social media team versus the role of leading a community team. Oh, how's that?
Wow, what a question. I think a lot of people in the audience are going to be like, yeah, exactly. And part of that is I think, what's the difference? That's one of the biggest things, because a lot of people lump the two teams together and they try to make the social media manager be the community manager and the community manager be the social media manager. And I think that there's sort of a difference in that.
And then what do you think the difference is? I mean, you've started the sentence. You got to finish it. What do you think the difference is?
I think the social media manager is the one that is driving the strategy for the company. And I think that, at least in my case, in my career, the community manager is really the voice of the people and the voice of the customer, and the one that is advocating and developing things to make the community happy. So there's kind of a difference, I think.
All right, folks, in chat, do you agree with Deb? Disagree? What do you think if she says? Don't feel judged by the comments you see, Deb. We still love you no matter what they might say. Christina, what do you think is a difference? I love Deb's answer. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Have a different answer? Go.
I agree, but I think there's more differences as well. So I think it's an issue of empowerment and ownership, and it's also an issue of content creation. So when we're talking about social teams, the main thing we're talking about, especially if you're leading a social team, is what does the planning look like? What is the strategy, like Deb said? What content are we creating? How does it align with what our other initiatives are doing? Is there a specific campaign? Is there something that's happening in the wider scheme of things that we have to like tap into? Versus community, the community, everyone has the opportunity to create content. There isn't one singular voice, hopefully. There are people who are able to share their thoughts, ask questions, and be able to do that. And by having that, there's this sense of ownership. Whereas if I'm on social and I'm on Twitter, I have the power to reach out to that brand, and that brand might retweet me or might respond, but we're not on equal playing fields. In the community, there isn't this hierarchy. There's very much this safe place. I can come in here. I have this one-to-one relationship with the brand and the community managers, but I can also have a one-to-one relationship with my peers, with my fellow customers, with my fellow community members. And I think that sense of hierarchy and ownership and who gets to create content, it changes how you react to each other. It changes what that relationship looks like. And so I think for that, I agree with Deb, but I would add that like addendum.
All right. So let's have some fun. This is the slide that we put together unbeknownst to our panelists, honest to God. And let's see, I'm looking at the slide now. It's called What's the Difference? Or the Overlap or the Confusion. And I'm just going to read through this very quickly for those who may be listening to this instead of watching this because you're driving down the car, you're on the bus, whatever it might be. Social media acts as the brand. Community embodies the user. Social media is a broadcast channel. Community is an engagement channel. Social media is short-term and conversion-focused. Community is long-term and supportive. Social media is focused on promotion. Community is focused on support. Social media is highly visible. Community is private. It's a safe space. Christina, did we nail it? Mm-hmm. Is there something we said there that you didn't think about?
No, I think that covers it quite well. Yeah.
How about you, Deb? I saw you smiling when I was reading that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that completely. And particularly, I think Christina touched on this about the community being private and being kind of a safe space. And it's usually in a group. If you're looking at like a Facebook group, or it's behind a wall. And so it's not as public as somebody putting something out there on Twitter.
Oh, I want to talk about that. And that's why the title here also said, not just what's the difference, what's the overlap, but what's the confusion. So here's the question I will put out there. Deb, you just said, especially if you're in a Facebook group, wonderful the way you said that. What if I'm a social media rock star and I'm all about social media? I don't have any ownership of community in my organization. Maybe my organization doesn't have an official, formal community, designated community. But we have a Facebook group. Am I still in social media or am I in community? Can a Facebook group be both? Can it just be one? Because I've seen groups that were just another vehicle to do press release announcements. And, there's a new release out there, FYI. So you tell me. I saw you struggling with that one.
Well, I'm not struggling so much, but I mean, yes to all of that. Yes, yes, and yes, because I think the cool thing about a community, it's what you want it to be and what your users want it to be. And so if you open up a Facebook group and you're using it to release press releases and you attract people to that group that want that information, and there is there's probably some interaction that happens in that group that goes back and forth, or maybe not. Maybe it is just the vehicle for like a gathering spot for that information. I mean, that could be a community, I think. But on the other side, you also have the problem of like, is that fall under the social media manager, or should there be a direct community manager for that? And I think what ends up happening is a lot of smaller businesses, smaller companies, the person is both, and they are managing the social, and then they also get the group, right? And there just has to be some different things that happen in the group than what happened on social. But then there's also communities. There's a ton of different options for communities that can happen outside of Facebook. You have Circle, you have the list is big. I'm trying to think of other places, Discord, Discourse, all that. So community has exploded over the past year or so. And so there's lots of different opportunities where you can do this kind of gathering of people that are interested in a single subject. And in that case, when they're not in Facebook, they're probably less likely to be the social media manager that's managing that group or that community.
Christina, let me ask you a question. So if I am a social media leader in my organization, but we don't have a community per se, we don't necessarily have a Facebook group, we don't have an actual, maybe a Slack group, we don't have a dedicated platform like, was it Mighty Networks or whatever, that's powering our group, or Discord, et cetera. I don't have any of that. And I'm listening to this session right now. If I'm yelling at my screen saying you're wrong, because in my social media posts, people comment, and then we have the back and forth conversation, and that's a community. Yes, it's public, if it's on Twitter, all right. But maybe it's public if it's on LinkedIn, but it could be if it is in a Facebook format. I guess they're all public, but I have to be looking for that conversation. Is that a community? If I'm on social media only, but I'm having back and forth conversations with my followers.
I think it's really interesting. I will use an analogy. I would look at Facebook groups as to community as I would use Canva to graphic designers. Because community has exploded and a lot of businesses want to capitalize on community, but they don't want to necessarily build out their own teams. We've all seen those job descriptions where if you're a social media manager, you also have to be a marketer. You also have to be in analytics. You also need to know how to do paid. You also need to know how to do SEO. You also know how to do websites. You also need to do this and you need to do that. And so what we've done is by having places like Facebook groups, which are viable and which can do great things, don't get me wrong, but that's been a really easy slippery slope for people to say, that's on social, that's community, add it to the list, add it to the thing of people of what they have to do. For the same reasons that someone's saying, I don't need to hire a graphic designer. I'll just make sure that we have Canva. And then that's just one more thing that my marketers have to do. And so if you really want to have a community and you really want it to be facilitated for your company or your brand, I would be very thoughtful about where that lives. Facebook groups and just the everything that Meta is doing, they are doing things for users and they are doing things for brands that you have no control over as a user. They're going to do paid verification. They just came out with that recently in the last few days. And so depending on how you feel about Meta, depending on how you feel about support, that may not need to be where your community is. I find that Facebook groups was a really great, probably what's the best case is it's your first taste of what community could look like, but it's not an ideal state. There's so much you don't control. There's limitation to how much viewership there is. There is a limitation to what can offer. And then also you have to factor in that Meta is notorious for not having customer support unless you have so much paid with them that you have your own rep. If you don't pay enough for ads to have your own rep, you could do a rain dance and you have a better chance of getting help that you need for your Facebook page or for your Instagram if it's hacked, if there's a problem, if it's shut down for reasons you have no idea. So if you were really thoughtful about community and you really want something for your people, it needs to be in a place that you have some sense of ownership. It has to be in a place that is thoughtful and you're wondering what that's going to look like to them. If it's just a channel to get those press releases, I would say you can have comments all day, but unless those people are starting their own post, if you're the only one that's initiating, that's not a community.
Oh.
And that's also how you know a community is going well. If you've started a community, that's when you know it's starting to mature, is when your community manager isn't the one that's like always poking it. Mm-hmm. When other people start initiating, people that are not on your team, that's when you know that the community is actually starting to mature and you're having that community-led growth. But if you're just posting and no one else is posting, I'm sorry. Like, send the hate mail. I'll send you my email address. It's not a community. It's social. It's a publishing channel. It has to have this back and forth momentum outside of the comments. There has to be a sense of empowerment. If the only person who can post to that group is a moderator or someone who is associated with that brand, it's social wrapped up in a community bow, but it's not a community.
Okay. So, folks, I will fully admit at this point in time, the conversation that we're having here, while unscripted, might have been a little bit directed by me, because I wanted to get to that, kind of that bucketing of what's social media, what's community, and what's that kind of gray line overlap like we just talked about here. And Christina, I community with a bow, is that what you said? Or social media with a bow? Either way.
It's social media analogy. With a community bow. Yeah.
Social media.
It's cosplaying. It's cosplaying as community, but it's not. It's social media.
Christina has given me so many quotes for the social media promotion of this event, of the on-demand playback. Social media with the community bow. It's cosplay. I mean, this is awesome. Okay. So there we go. So you're listening to this. I'm going to assume that each of you listening to this kind of bucket it yourself. You kind of said, yeah, I'm probably more social. Oh, I'm definitely more community. Oh, I'm kind of stuck in that middle, that gray area. So again, in the chat, go down there and just share with us where you think you fall in that area. But of course, today's conversation is we want to use these two fine women to teach you how you can leverage community to grow your social media efforts. So it's really about going beyond just the social media, or as Christine was alluding to, if you have a Facebook group that's not in your control, that you can't get support for, Jesus, like they're taking lessons from Elon. Then there you go. You that's not really community, is it? If you're the only one putting stuff out there, nobody else is initiating. That's not community. But that's okay, because we're going to help you. So let me start out here. I'll be the CMO for a minute. Okay. So the CMO for a minute. We CMOs, we're idiots, and this is why. We view social media as a channel. I can create awareness. I can get news out there. I can tell them about this cool webinar with these two thought leaders, Deb and Christina, and they'll all sign up. We view it as a one-way push. But the reality is, what we want ultimately is we want to actually do all of this to actually eventually get a paying customer. I don't want to disillusion you. That's what we do. We want your money. So as long as you understand that, I know Christina's going, damn, no one told me this. We want your money. But beyond that, what we want you to do is we want you to stick around. We really hate when you sign up and then you leave. You churn. We don't want churn. Churn is bad. We want big lifetime values, low customer acquisition costs. That's why we love social media. High lifetime value. And these are how we CMOs are measured. And too many CMOs don't understand that it doesn't end at social media. Well, too many CMOs just treat social media as something that you just seek likes, shares, and follows. And that's a complete stupid thing. In fact, I love it because see how I'm getting saucy there. That's a complete stupid thing. I'm sorry for the foul language. Both Gartner and HubSpot have done incredible research, which ironically, did you notice that HubSpot rhymes with schmubspot? Just saying that. They did a research report not too long ago, and they said, of these 17 channels, marketers, what are your prioritized investments? And number one was social media. So that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Gartner agrees with HubSpot, and that's a polling of all the highly influential, successful CMOs. The bad thing is, too many CMOs don't understand that social media is just it's like the gateway drug, if you do it well, to community, where then word of mouth happens. More people know about you. There's more awareness. It's a safe space. There's lots of conversation. You're the cool place to be. And then people stick around for a long, long time because they like you. They like your product. They like the people who use your product. That's what it's all about. So with that as my setup, Deb, simple question. How can social media teams use community to impact growth?
That is a challenge. And it's hard because I think as a community person, it's hard to come back to the CMO and say, this is how the community is actually impacting growth. And I think one of the ways that you have to do it is you have to measure it, and you have to get the right reporting and the right things set up behind the scenes so that you can prove it and so that you can talk about it. And one of the things we did very early on when we developed our first client agency community in for Agorapulse is that we set up the Google Analytics, and we know, I have a dashboard that I use, and I don't know, I am not a big data girl that can tell you how we did it all, but I have a dashboard that I can go to that our data team set up that will tell us who is more likely to stay and not churn from our product. And that is the people that are in this group. So I think as for growth, having that knowledge and knowing that being in that group and what we're doing in that community is so helpful because it allows us to see opportunities for growth, right? It means like doing something like this where we're doing a webinar and we're providing education for our community. Having good resources for your community will help grow the community, because what it does is it, like, one person talks to another person. Oh my gosh, do you know that they have this great Twitter chat? And then next thing you know, you're on the Twitter chat and you're growing the community, and you're gaining education. And then next thing you know, they're over in your community where the conversation continues. So it's hard for me to pinpoint exactly what Christina is going to be so much better at this question than I am.
Well, let me just kind of recap what you said there, right? Because this is the challenge I always have when I have these kind of conversations, because this conversation, if I have this conversation with a bunch of community managers or a bunch of social media managers, it's going to go one way. If I have this conversation with a bunch of CMOs, it's going to go a different way. And the reality is they work together. So this is what I heard you say, but I'm going to put my CMO spin.
Okay, good.
On what you said. And then we'll see what Christina says. So you said, and I'm paraphrasing here, that if they have a good community, then there's a lot of word of mouth. They tell each other about it and saying, this is the place to go. All right. So in CMO speak, that community is driving awareness. And when they drive awareness, ironically, the first thing they do is then they sign up for to follow all my social media channels, because they want to know what's going on from corporate, which is a little different than from the community. I want to be clear on that. But awareness is what everybody wants, right? True story. When I was hired, awareness was one of 3 criteria that they hired me specifically on. One of the 3, I'll share 2. One was, Darryl, if you join Agorapulse, take on the CMO role, we're going to measure you on the actual revenue marketing drives. 2, so you better sure as hell drive revenue, my good friend, which goes back to that HubSpot article, but how are CMOs driving article? Social media, #1 channel. Second, we're going to measure you on specifically awareness. In other words, I always use the example, every category, pick any category, whether it be, electronics, computers, phones, cola, has got 2 leaders, right? You got Coke and Pepsi, you got GM and Ford, right? The list goes on. There's always 2. So I want to be in that 2, because if I have more awareness and I'm in that 2, then leads come to me just because I'm the default. You better kick the tires in that company's offerings, as opposed to me having to convince them and educate them and have a longer sales cycle, longer cost of sale. So when I create awareness, then I have a lower cost of sale and I have greater reach. So that's what I heard you say, all because the community did that. Second thing I heard you say was, because they're talking amongst themselves about problems they're having, if I'm watching that conversation take place, I can spot problems before they become huge. Because when they become huge, that's when people start looking at alternative solutions and they leave me. So if I hear you saying that wonderful stuff, How do I do this? This always breaks for me. I can get my support people to jump in there, whether it's in the community or it's my social media people or my customer success people, and they can jump in and they can actually offer help. The other thing you said to me was there was a learning that takes place there. It's sharing and a learning. And that's moving them, what I would say, that's moving them through the education process. Well, why do I care about the education process? Because ideally, as a CMO, I want to upsell and cross-sell my platform. I want to get you from the base entry solution to the Cadillac solution. And now guess what? There's more features up there. If I tell you that's what this feature is for, you're going to ignore me because I'm corporate and I'm biased. But if the community says, here's the benefit of those more expensive options, then you're more inclined to do that. So all of this is, for lack of a better word, CMO speak, a very soft sell. No one wants to hear that. But here's the thing, social media folks. Remember, we're trying to teach you here how to use community. At the end of the day, and I've said this already, too many CMOs don't value what you do. They can't measure what they do. If you did all this and you said, Mr. CMO, Ms. CMO, I am going to help build your awareness that we can measure. I am going to offer proactive support, which is going to reduce churn. And I'm going to do upsells, all because of the community, which is built upon the social media. If you do that, I can actually measure that. Now and by the way, I'm not your biggest channel, and I want more money, and I want more responsibility. Your CMOs will love you, love you, love you, love you, love you. So that's CMO speak for what I just heard you said, Deb. Now, I'll shut up because I've talked way too much. Christina's been smiling nonstop. She's been very patient. Christina, the question was, how can social media teams use communities to impact growth?
It's positive reinforcement flywheel. Basically what
I told you she was going to get
She's got the best.
So brands do a fantastic job of doing social listening for people who are mad. They do a fantastic job. They have escalation channels. They have emails. They have an escalation process. If someone says this word, it's going to get dinged in a specific part of their Twitter or one of their dashboards. The problem is that people, when they think about that initial touch, that brand awareness, they are gauging if the other things they know about you align with what they're seeing on social. You say you have great support, but is your support actually taking care of people when they complain? Oh, you say you are customer obsessed, but when your customers say something that isn't complaining, are you responding to them? So the way that I talk about that is we're really good about putting out fires, but you also need to water the flowers. You need to continually positively reinforce the behavior that you would like to see from your customers. So much of our work in community and advocacy and social runs on vibes. It's vibes. And the reason why it's hard for social teams to be able to track what they're doing is because just like in sales, if I tell you like it's going to take 10 or 15 touches for me to close the sale, you're like, cool, understand, I got you. But if I said I have to make this person see a post 15 times on Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram in order to close a sale, you're going to look at me like I'm a crazy person. But it's the same thing. I need to continually create this cadence of content, of emotion, of alignment that showcases that when you talk to my salesperson and they make you feel a certain way, and when they promise you certain things, that makes sense. It aligns with everything else you're seeing about us. And so if you aren't doing that, if you only look and respond to people who are mad at your brand, you are telling them that they should only talk about you when they're mad, because they're only going to get your attention when they're mad. And social media exists because there's this tiny little narcissistic child in all of us that wants to be seen, that wants to be heard, that wants to be appreciated, that wants their thoughts validated. And if you come from this mindset of, if someone reaches out to us and they're proud about something, they're happy about something, or they figured out how to do a workflow, we should be their greatest champion. We should be customer obsessed. We should be fans of our customers, and it should show in our social channels. Because just imagine, I talk about community as like party host. Would you ever go to someone's house if they invited you, if they were mean to you in public? So why would I ever be in your community if you're mean to people on social? Like if you can't be nice to me when everyone's looking, then I will never go to a private space with you where I can only imagine it'll be worse. You have to really showcase your values on social. It should be seen in everything you do. And a lot of brands have this kind of concept of reach at all cost, meme at all cost, viral at all cost. And what that does, it's it's isolating you from the customer base that does not like that. If you are going viral or you're doing memes and you're doing like really highly cringy stuff, yes, you're going to get views. Yes, you're going to get a lot of earned media. But how many people are you losing because you've chosen reach over your values? You've chosen reach over what you want your customers to feel like. And so I think that as CMOs, as brands, you need to choose what is more valuable to you, because loyalty and value and what you want that brand to stand for, it takes forever to build, and it can be destroyed in one tweet. It can be destroyed in one TikTok. And if you think that that reach is worth destroying the brand that you've built, I would challenge that. And I think that that's what it comes down to. So what I like to say is, if you do it as almost like a framework, at the end of the day, on social and in community, if I make people feel insert this way, then they will be more likely to do this behavior. And if they do this behavior, then I can track it here with this KPI.
Okay, so I'm just going to shut up and let Christina do the rest of the show. She's a soundbite machine. We got the cosplay. We got positive reinforcement flywheel. I improvised in something she said. I called it reach over relationship. That's what I called it, but that was built upon what she said. And all of this, and I love it. I love what your point, your essence of what you're saying here is based. I don't know, maybe I'll rephrase a little bit of what you said very quickly, and we'll move on. In community, you can build up goodwill. Because even if there is a bad day or a bad feature release or whatever, we've been a crew. We've been through the battles together. We've had each other's back. It's been great. Whereas just on social media, then one bad tweet can ruin everything and it's gone, exactly as you just said. And Lord knows many people have seen their entire social media career decimated by one bad tweet, one bad post. So if you're listening now, remember the whole thing here was we want to help our social media rock stars grow their social media impact by learning from the community lessons we've all acquired from our community rock stars here. Let me ask you this question. What's the process? So if I'm just social media today and I'm listening to this and I'm saying, I get it. I get everything you're saying. What Deb has said, what Christina has said. Like I want that, but I'm only doing social media. Is there a way to start? Like, in other words, is a Facebook group the way to kind of that next step to start creating a community? Or do I go into somebody else's community and become a strong contributor with my brand, my corporate brand, and my own personal brand? Both of them are very busy in that other community. Where do I start to try to, spread my wings a little bit? I'll go back to you. I'll start with you, Christina, and then we'll bring it back to Deb.
Absolutely. There's an amazing community of community managers that I absolutely adore. There's a ton of free assets that you can look up. One of the first things that I would look at is the community canvas. I didn't create this. It's based off of Steve Blank's business model canvas. And it gives you essentially like a one-sheet breakdown of how to build a minimum viable community. It's like little boxes, and it's like, who is this for? And what does this look like? And what are the guidelines? And you can find it at community-canvas.org. Anytime I've mentored anyone in community, it's the first thing I bring them to. Like, this is the foundation of everything because it's basic, core, foundational understanding of why you're doing this, who it's for, what is that relationship going to look like? And then if you're starting to build a community, whether it's on Facebook, which kind of hinted at is a bit of a gateway drug kind of community, for lack of a better phrase, I would have your leadership team or whoever is dictating from leadership that like, hey, we should do a community, have them go over that with some key stakeholders and have them fill out that form and just say like, look, 5 minutes, do it dirty. Like, just what is your gut instinct telling you? Just to see if there's any alignment. There's been a lot of struggles in the community space, as it's had just as many highs as it has lows. There's been tons of layoffs. And I think it comes down to making sure that you understand the alignment between the business goals as well as the community goals and finding out where those look. And so you need to have that community canvas from leadership and whoever's going to run it. You need to make sure that y'all are all on the same page so that success to one looks like success to the other. I would start there. Another, I would absolutely recommend following Rosie Sherry on Twitter. She is absolutely fantastic. She's always giving some really great worksheets, frameworks, just absolutely fantastic. There's also something called Community Club through ComSOAR that is a small micro community for community managers to connect and grow and ask questions. Highly recommend joining that. But also, don't be afraid to just like connect with people. I think that a lot of the issue between social and community tends to be this lack of door. When you're on social, and I saw this, I did a tweet in like 2020, late 2020, and it blew up. And all it was is a door. It's a post that basically said, if you are in the marketing space in any capacity and you have fewer than 1,000 followers, like introduce yourself, connect. That's also what Twitter chats do. Like Deb was mentioning Twitter chats. What people are looking for is people want community, but they don't know where the door is. Or they don't want to knock on the door once they find it. They want to feel invited. They want to feel welcomed. And people are so, especially in the past few years where we've all felt so isolated, rejection on top of that isolation is incredibly hurtful. So we're in this need to like self-protect. So I might want to be in a community, but I don't want to say anything because I don't want someone to think I'm stupid, or I don't want someone to wonder like, why is she even here? And so I think we need to be very careful. Have that understanding of psychology. I think marketers in general need to have this such a crucial empathetic understanding of psychology and the need to understand not only what do I want them to do, like what's the CTA for this, but couple it with like, how do I want them to feel about this? Does this make them feel welcomed? Does this feel too cold? And I think having that framework in mind and just having it kind of as an undercurrent of everything that you do, it's going to keep you honest. And it's going to make you be very thoughtful about how you're talking to people, whether they are a fellow community member or they're a community manager.
All right. So, folks, Christina's just giving you like a whole bunch of opportunities to further your knowledge in your role as a social media rock star. If you missed the website, it's community-canvas.org. It's fantastic. It's a framework to help you build meaningful communities. You're sitting here going, but yeah, I don't have a mandate to build a community. I would argue, even if you don't have a formal mandate, that's only because your marketing leadership hasn't been explicit. The reason they want you to do what you're doing and they call social media is because they want to create that community. They want to create that awareness. They want to create that loyalty. They want to create that virtual word of mouth. Your CMOs are measured on the revenue they drive, just like a sales leader is. The difference is sales doesn't have a discretionary budget. They just have people. Marketing has a people cost plus a discretionary budget. And that discretionary budget for program spend gets massive scrutiny from the CEO, the CFO, the COO, and there is more stress on your marketing leadership to prove an ROI. And so when Christina was talking about the CTA, like my eyes were lighting up because that's why I'm empowering you as social media people in the first place. I want there to be conversions. We open up by saying that, and a call to action leads to a conversion, which becomes a very cost-effective lead source for me versus, say, pay-per-click or paid social, much higher, much more expensive. So the community, if you came to me and said, hey, I'm thinking of opening up a Facebook group, or I'm thinking of opening a Discord, or I'm thinking of doing something else, I'm going to go, okay, because in my mind as a CMO, that's just an extension of what you're already doing. Most CMOs, most marketing leaders are not community rock stars. They're not community leaders. I hate to tell you this because I'm throwing my peers under the bus, but we're not. We need you to lead us. Now, Deb, this is where I'm going to segue to you. Well, you are with, and you probably had all your questions ready to answer, all in your head. I'm going to throw you a new one just because I've been asked that way. So
okay.
You are running Social Media Pulse. It is
Yes.
a community for social media managers, technicians, rock stars, call it what you will. It's not a community for CMOs, although CMOs are more than welcome to hang out. Yet you come from the social media side long before social media Pulse, the community, even existed. And even in social media Pulse, you don't just have the community, but you still have your own dedicated social media handles on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and everything else, Instagram. So you've done both. So help me understand, how do you use today social media, those handles, and your previous work experience to grow your new community? Because remember, we're only about a year and change old at Social Media Pulse. So this has been a ground up, let's build a community from scratch effort. What lessons did you learn that you can share with social media people out there to help them achieve their goals?
Well, I think I've had two things that I realized. And one is lots of people talk about community and they immediately think about a Facebook group. And then there is all the other places that you can build community. And then you realize that there's like this enterprise level of community, like what Christina is involved in. And until actually the Clubhouse days, I didn't even realize that they were different, or that there were like these two kind of camps. And so when we started building Social Media Pulse, initially we were all in on Facebook back in the day when Facebook groups were new and pretty much what you did. But when we started to talk about like, okay, we want to go deeper than a Facebook group. We want to have control over it. We want people to be able to see it. We don't want to be dependent on an algorithm. We want to have amazing search capabilities. We want to have all these type of features that a Facebook group cannot give you. You hired somebody that was, really well known in the community space, and he was coming from the enterprise section of community. And when you look at that, you're looking at big brands that are in the community space, like HubSpot. I would put HubSpot in that group. I would put Social Media Pulse there now. Peloton, the Fitbit watch type community. That's a massive community that is very active. But that is different in a lot of ways than a Facebook community. But I feel like a lot of the people that are going to be watching this aren't quite ready to jump into that area. Because it does take a financial investment. It does take a team investment, whereas the Facebook and Circle and Mighty Networks and all of that seems to be done much more on a one-to-one or smaller team is capable of doing that. And Daryl, I have not answered your question, but I wanted to get that point in there. Yep. So readdress me, bring me back around to your question for me.
So the question was, you've got both a community and you've got social media, right? So you've used, when you built this from scratch, you still invested, like your social media roots never disappeared. So how did you leverage the community aspect to drive both AgoraPulse's corporate, because we are AgoraPulse funds the Social Media Pulse community. You wouldn't know it. You go to the community, you don't see our brand there, but we're not hiding it. This is something we're investing in for our own client base as well as everybody else. So ideally we want Social Media Pulse to grow AgoraPulse, but you've also got your own Social Media Pulse social media handles and followers. So how do you use the community side to grow all those social media side?
Well, one of the cool things is we have a pretty good following on AgoraPulse. We also had established Social Media Pulse as a kind of a side brand for our community. On Facebook. We had a Facebook group, and then we've got a few other groups. And so we have a large number of people that we've gathered up that all are interested in AgoraPulse. They're all social media managers, or there's something that makes those people interested in us. So we have that group. And so what we've been working on doing is bringing them over to the community. And that's something that I work on every day, trying to transition people over. But you're right, we do have our social accounts, and that's how we're using our social accounts a lot, in that we're using it as as a place to direct people to what's happening in Social Media Pulse community. Last year we produced like 350 pieces of content that is all geared around social media managers and stuff that they need to know. Christina has contributed to that content. Thank you, Christina. And so what we use is we will advertise that piece of content or make a post about that piece of content on all of our social channels, which allows our audience that we've already gathered. We spent the past 5, 10, 8 years of building up those channels. So they're all seeing that. Plus, when we go and get a contributor like Christina, she then has the capability to then broadcast that she's contributed to Social Media Pulse. So it's kind of like this. I want to say it's like a hurricane almost, in that it's a constant moving cyclone of we're moving people through our channels and through the pieces of content and even events. Like what's been really successful for us is we do these summits for Agora Pulse. We did an agency summit last year, which was highly attended, and we have a social ROI summit that's coming up next month. And by having those summits and having us advertise that on our social, and I say advertise, and I mean that as like making posts and creating content around that, but that's drawing people into our community and bringing them into our sphere, if you will. And I kind of think as Social Media Pulse and Agora Pulse, that we're all like in this orbit, which it's ironic because Social Media Pulse is all space oriented, right? We're all in there together and things just kind of move around naturally together. I hope that helps.
That does help. So I'm gonna bring everything together now. I'm gonna go back to something Christina said earlier. Christina made the comment at least twice that I caught, and I loved it because when she was making that comment, I was like, yes. And the comment was about content, the importance of content. So talk to me, Christina. What advice can you give our social media listeners today, social media rockstar listeners, about the importance of content, and how do I utilize that, whether it be with social media or with community? How do I partner with communities that maybe aren't mine to get content that I can put on my social media feed and grow my reach, or what? I mean, just give me some best tips about what you've seen work in your, a fan of the fans, and at that small little company called HubSpot that kind of has a wee bit of a content machine, just as minor, just a little bit. Yeah.
I think that it's going to be more important now than ever to create really great content, because we're going to see this massive content vacuum because of Chat GPT. Because of all these AI writers, we have the opportunity to accelerate the kind of content that we're creating. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's good. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's what our social audiences and our community members want to see. So now is the time to be an editor. Now is the time to be very hyper curated into what is the kind of content that we want to have, because volume is no longer the problem. ChatGPT solves the volume problem. Now it's a matter of what is the value that you can provide that no other brand can provide? What is the perspective? What are the data points? What is the knowledge? Who are the thought leaders? What can you bring to the table? It's ChatGPT solves volume, but creativity, personalization, that stuff is still up for grabs. So when you're trying to figure out what that content looks like, voice the customer, especially for us, is incredibly important. I'm always looking for opportunities for our Hub fans, our advocates, to be able to be the voice. So instead of me telling you how great HubSpot is, I'm going to be able to find the people that you would much rather talk to. They can tell you what workflow they created. They can tell you what their ROI is. They can tell you their journey by using our product. And so that looks like UGC, that looks like quotes, that looks like video tutorials of how they did something. If you go to LinkedIn and you search the hashtag HubSpot tips and tricks, you are going to see an entire feed of our customers, our partners, our HubSpot Academy professors, our engineering team, our product team, all giving you tutorials. Steal this workflow. Here is how I did this. This is my favorite feature. And what that's doing is It's not creating content for content's sake. It's creating content that I wish I had had when I just became a customer. It's the content I wish I had when I was wondering if I should choose HubSpot or somebody else. It's the content I wish I had when I was trying to do this workflow and decided I was just going to have to look at it tomorrow because my head hurts too much. All of those things, having such a core understanding of your customer base, your social media base, your community member base, what do they want? And how can you make it as niche as they need? How can you make it as general as they need? And how can you really showcase that you're paying attention to what their thoughts are? If you have feedback, the product team should be able to talk to them. Why did you have this problem? Why would this solution that you're recommending be better for you? Is it something in the roadmap? The closer you create a feedback loop for your social team, for your community members, for your loudest customers, the better off you're going to be. They feel heard, they feel seen, they're going to improve your product, and you're going to have that positive reinforcement flywheel I was talking about earlier.
All right, I'm going to jump in here because I know we're running tight on time. I want to opine here, but don't worry, Deb, you'll get your kick of the can. In a nutshell, great content bridges the gap between social media and community. Let me give you a simple example of what we do here at Agorapulse, leveraging our community, social media pulse, to do exactly what Christina talks about, where it's not the volume, it's how compelling is it, how value add is it, how unique is it. We, go figure, like every other marketing organization out there that has their act together, we have a campaign counter. I can tell you what will be happening in 3 months from now, 4 months from now, 5 months from now, what the theme is for the month, what are all the campaigns happening around that theme. What we do is at least 3 months in advance, we go, and we do this every single month, we go to our community. Now, I could do this with anybody's community, but we just happen to use our community, Social Media Pulse. And we say, Deb, please go organize a live stream conversation with a bunch of really smart people from the community who are revered, respected, the Christinas of the world, and talk about this topic, which is going to happen in 3 months' time, because that's on my campaign calendar. And she does that. And she's adding value with unique perspectives only being received by her community. Sounds great. The community wins. But then we take that live stream and we turn it into an ebook, and we turn it into blog posts, we turn it into social media posts, and we quote the Christinas of the world, and we make all the little video clips, the digital confetti. And 3 months later, all that content appears and it's being used on our social channels to drive, to download the ebook, because I have a CTA, because I want you to be a customer. So there's an example of where we're using the flywheel of what Christina alluded to earlier. Different context. Hers was a positive reinforcement flywheel. Mine is a content flywheel, but it starts in community. And what's great is I can see the reaction in the community. I can see the buy-in. I can see the online conversations. I can see the comments. And then I can steal all that great stuff because now I know what to go with 3 months later in my marketing calendar when I repurpose that. So classic hub and spoke right there, and it's all content. And Deb has some great. Okay, folks, the whole session today started off with trying to give you ideas on how social media teams can use communities to drive growth. We've established that you're either right in on social media, you're right in communities, or you're in that gray spot in between. Some communities are more flexible than others. We talked about Facebook perhaps not being the best support, being bound by their terms and conditions, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe that's not the best, but it's a starting point. We talked about how you can work with these communities, whether they're your own or somewhere else. We talked about how you need to run with it to teach your leadership on why, if you're just in social, you should start expanding your reach, maybe into a mini community, then a full-fledged community. We talked to you about how your marketing leadership thinks. They don't think in likes and follows and shares. They think in awareness. They think in customer acquisition costs. They think in lifetime value. All right. So you want to connect the dots of what you're doing to how they're being measured. And if you do that well, they will give you more money and they will build a team around you. So let me say what binds all this together is fantastic content. And if you do that, what you will have is just every single cool buzzword in the world that Christina came up with today. So How did I do for that recap, Deb? Did I miss anything?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that's great.
Christina, did I miss anything? What would you add?
I think you're good.
All right, Christina, where does the world meet you? What social channels? What like how do I follow you and just get more cosplay sound bites?
I live on Twitter still. I am arranging deck chairs on the Titanic over there if you need me. I'm at that Christina G. I'm also on LinkedIn. Those are the two channels that I'm the most on. So
I love that you're on Twitter. I love Twitter, and I'm sad about the show that's taking place in front of us. A Twitter example is the Titanic example is a very good analogy. I can totally get it. I'll join you on the deck playing my instruments as we go down.
Sounds good.
Deb, where do we meet you? Where do we follow you? Tell us more about Social Media Pulse. How do we find that community?
Yeah, I would find me at Social Media Pulse. That's the best place. It's you can jump over to socialmediapulse.community, and we've got a great home for you there. All about social media and digital marketing, and every day the content that we're putting out and what we're doing in the community, we put our hat on is, why does a social media manager care about this? And how can this help a social media manager? We curate jobs for social media managers. We curate content. We talk about the latest crazy thing. We talk about the Titanic going down. We do news show. And so come over and join us there. We'd love to have you.
And there's a wonderful link on our screen right now. Join our community, Social Media Pulse. It's a social media manager community. There's your unique selling proposition right there. Wonderful link. And I guess I would be remiss as a marketer who's being held accountable for revenue if I didn't suggest you should watch Agora Pulse in action. Go see it. There's the link right there. And I should also mention, this is, she has no idea I was about to say this. We are big HubSpot users on the marketing and on the sales side. And that had nothing to do with Christina joining us today. She's just a rock star. Folks, that's Christina. That's Deb. I'm Daryl. If you got value out of this, spread the word, go on social, share it, go to your community and share it. It's going to be great content. We're going to make some digital confetti. Will you be consuming it? We hope so. Take care.